Rain sluiced down the city streets, drumming a relentless rhythm against the brownstone's windows. Michael Kaplan's leather coat clung damp to his shoulders as he stepped through the front door into a house that smelled of stale air and unanswered questions. The soft glow of a lone ceiling lamp revealed the foyer's elegance. Polished oak floors, a small table scattered with Emily's design sketches, and atop it, a single crumpled slip of paper. He approached with cautious dread. The note's 4 words, written in hurried, unfamiliar script, felt like a blade grazing his ribs. "I'm sorry, I can't stay." His pulse thundered in his ears. Michael lifted the paper, fingertips grazing its jagged edges, and replayed their last conversation in his mind. Her airy excuses about late-night inspiration sessions. The strained tightness behind her smile, the way her eyes flickered whenever he pressed for details. Until now, he'd chalked it up to stress at the gallery where she worked, the endless deadlines that consumed her. He slid the note into his pocket and crossed into the kitchen, heart sinking. Stainless steel counters and dark marble islands stood sterile under the weak light. A half-empty glass of red wine balanced on a stool, its contents gone cold, and beside it lay Emily's tablet, screen cracked at the corner, notifications blinking unanswered. He tapped it open, scrolling through messages she'd kept hidden. Flirtatious emojis, clandestine rendezvous coordinates, and dozens of texts signed "ls." His breath caught. LS matched nothing in his contacts, but it matched the initials engraved on the rose-gold earring he'd found on their hallway floor just 2 nights ago. He pressed LS into his memory and shook off a tremor as he pocketed the tablet. A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the living room beyond. The high shelves lined with Emily's favorite art books, the sofa where they once curled up on weekends, and the portrait of them at their wedding. Smiling, innocent, whole. Now those walls felt alien, haunted by secrets. Michael's gaze drifted to the stairwell. He climbed on silent feet, each step echoing doubts he'd never allowed himself to admit. In their bedroom, moonlight filtered through half-closed blinds, striping the bed in chiaroscuro. The comforter lay tangled, as though someone had fled in haste. He moved to the nightstand and found the USB drive taped beneath, a grim treasure peeled free of dust and darkness. He returned downstairs, laptop in hand, and settled at the kitchen island. Fingers steady but heart pounding, he inserted the drive. Folders labeled studio_shots, late_calls, financial_log appeared. He opened the first video file. The screen came alive with dim yellow light and the rough edges of a rented loft. Canvases splashed with violent reds and sorrowful blues, paint-stained easels, a single overhead bulb casting long shadows. In the center, Emily stood at an easel, shoulders hunched, brush trembling as she stroked the canvas. Behind her, a tall figure in a tailored suit murmured encouragement. The man's voice was low. "Let your pain guide you. Show me the real Emily." She hesitated, then pressed her brush with fierce determination, tears mingling with paint. Michael watched a single droplet roll down her cheek before she wiped it away and forced a tentative smile. He paused the footage on that frame. Emily's face, radiant yet haunted, caught between anguish and hope. The stranger's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Michael's chest constricted. Elise had never told him about this studio. She had never mentioned this man. His vision blurred with betrayal. Each memory of their late-night talks, her work deadlines, every postponed date night coalesced into a tapestry of lies. The house's silence pressed in around him, punctuated only by the hum of the laptop and the storm's persistent roar. He closed the file and opened the next, a series of phone recordings. Emily's voice, thick with emotion, pleading, "I don't know who I am anymore without someone believing in me." Then the man's smooth response, "You have to trust me. I can make you someone the world will remember." Her answer, a whispered confession, "I trust you." The cut ended on his own reflection, pale in the screen's glow. Michael rose, knocking the chair back. He felt the weight of every unanswered question fall onto him like lead. Outside, thunder rumbled, a tremor that mirrored his resolve. In that moment, he made a choice. He would follow this secret thread wherever it led, unravel every hidden lie, and reclaim the truth of their lives. He pocketed the USB drive and stepped back into the storm's drumming embrace. Each drop of rain felt like a promise of revelation, and each flash of lightning a call to action. Betrayal had taken root. Now Michael would expose its every shadow. And as the door clicked shut behind him, the city's night held its breath, waiting to see which hidden truths he would uncover next. Michael's shoes clicked on the slick pavement as he traced Emily's hidden footsteps through the neighborhood of faded warehouses and iron fire escapes. The address on the crumpled napkin, Loft 7F, 312 East 54th Street, led him to a hulking brick building whose windows were darkened by grime. A single dim glow leaked from the rooftop entrance. He pressed the buzzer for 7F and waited, tension coiling in his chest like a restless serpent. A distant cough echoed through the shaft of the stairwell. Michael took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The loft's interior breathed stale air and turpentine fumes. Canvases leaned against exposed brick. Raw portraits in deep carmine. Abstract storms in midnight blue. In the center, Emily bent over an easel, brush stained with cobalt. Lines of anguish captured in each stroke. Behind her stood a man. His suit tailored to perfection. His posture lenient but commanding. Michael's throat tightened. "Emily," he called softly. She froze, brush hovering above the canvas. Her breath hitched, and she turned. The man stepped forward, his face still hidden in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice smooth as silk. "Who are you?" Michael's tone cut through the hush. He advanced, heart-pounding, USB drive digging into his pocket. "Why have you been lying to me? To us?" The man tilted his head. "Liam Scott." He introduced himself with a curt nod. He studied Michael with a calm appraisal, as though assessing a painting's worth. "I'm the one who believes in Emily's talent more than anyone else." Emily swallowed, eyes flickering between them. "Michael, he's been helping me, encouraging me when I felt lost." Michael's gaze hardened. Encouraging by hiding every detail? By recording her in secret? He withdrew the USB drive and held it aloft. "Everything is on here, your mentorship, your payments, your hidden camera angles." Liam's lips curved into a thin smile. "Mastery requires sacrifice. I gave her studio access, materials, even commission shows. I've invested far more than you could imagine." Michael stepped closer. "And in return, you demanded control. You manipulated her emotions, her art, her life." Liam's smile vanished. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a crumpled receipt. "You see this? A 6-month lease for this loft, paid in full through next spring. You imagine that's free? Everything has a price." He tossed the paper onto a dusty table. "Art is commerce, and I'm the broker." Emily's hands trembled, paint drips staining her fingertips. I thought you wanted to help me find my voice," she whispered. Liam studied her with an intensity that made her flinch. "I did, but raw talent without guidance is a flailing echo. I gave direction. I gave purpose." His gaze flicked to Michael. "Isn't that what you failed to do? You're a lawyer, always busy, always away." She needed someone present. Michael's jaw clenched. "Her trust wasn't a commodity for you to trade." He lifted the USB drive higher. "This is proof of extortion. Every recorded moment, every forced confession." Liam's eyes darkened. "Proof is subjective, Mr. Kaplan, and you have no proof of coercion. She came willingly." Emily's voice cracked as she intervened. "No, I didn't. I thought I was compelled. I was vulnerable, alone in my own life, and you preyed on that." She turned to Michael. "I'm sorry I hid this from you." Michael reached for her hand, offering silent solidarity. Then he faced Liam again. "I'm taking this to the authorities. Every file, every email, every bank statement. You exploited her, and now we'll hold you accountable." Liam sighed, as if disappointed rather than surprised. He tapped his temple. "Let's see if they believe your story over mine." He pocketed the receipt and stepped toward the back wall. With a swift motion, he flipped a switch. A hidden panel slid open, revealing shelves of hard drives, stacks of photographs, and folders stamped with Emily's name. Michael's breath caught. Liam's network was wider than he'd know. "How many of these have you shared? Sold? Used?" Michael demanded. Liam regarded the trove with a possessive gleam. Each piece of art, each confession, is a testament to my curation. They pay to see the artist's struggle. It's their voyeuristic fuel. He locked eyes with Michael. And you've been feeding their appetite with secrecy, until now. Michael's grip on the USB drive tightened. Not anymore. He turned and swept Emily toward the loft's exit. Come on. We're done here. As they reached the doorway, Liam's final words trailed after them. Just remember, every artist has a price. You only discovered the cost too late. Rain battered the windows as Michael pulled the door shut behind them. In the cramped stairwell, Emily leaned against his shoulder, tears trailing through the paint on her cheeks. Michael guided her down the steps, his grip firm. The city's night stretched out before them, wet, cold, and alive with possibilities. He had exposed one hidden truth tonight, but the ledger of deception was far from closed. And as they vanished into the storm, Michael vowed to unravel every remaining thread of betrayal, to bring Emily back from the shadows and into the light they once shared. The dawn after Michael's confrontation brought no peace. He and Emily returned to their brownstone soaked and shaken, yet neither dared sleep. The foyer light flickered overhead as Michael set the USB drive on the console table and stared at its unassuming black shell. Each file it contained, recordings of Emily's tears and Liam's low murmurs, had been forced into the open, but he sensed that making them public was only the beginning of a battle he could not yet see in full. Emily stood nearby, her damp hair clinging to her cheeks like paint strokes. She touched the drive, as though hoping its weight might anchor her to reality rather than the swirling guilt and shame inside her. "They'll believe me," she whispered. "You think they will?" His answer was a solemn nod. "They have to." Michael moved with purpose, gathering the drive, the crumpled notes, the receipt Liam had flung aside. They were evidence enough to spark an inquiry, but he worried the authorities would demand more. Paper trails, witnesses, concrete proof of coercion beyond whispered recordings. Together, they worked through the morning in a haze of coffee and whispered strategy. Michael drafted a concise account of events. The midnight visit to Liam's loft, the trove of hidden recordings, the forced studio sessions, all corroborated by timestamps, bank transactions, and Emily's own testimony. He packaged the files onto 2 copies of the drive, one for the district attorney's office, one as backup, and sealed them in tamper-evident envelopes. Emily wrote a statement in her best cursive, shaky at first but growing steadier as she relived each detail. "I felt trapped," she wrote. "He offered me freedom as long as I surrendered my control." When she finished, she pressed a thin line of lipstick to the envelope, almost as though signing a contract she wished she had never agreed to. Michael escorted her to the city attorney's building. The grand marble steps rose before them like a tribunal, cold and imposing. Emily clung to his arm as they walked inside. The receptionist guided them to a small conference room, where a middle-aged prosecutor, stern but not unkind, reviewed their packets. She clicked through video clips. Emily's studio confession, Liam's gentle coercion, the hidden camera's night vision frames, all disturbing evidence of manipulation. The prosecutor's eyes softened as she listened to Emily's voice cracking over the speakers. When the last clip ended, she leaned back. "We'll open an investigation," she said. "But it may take time." Michael nodded, offering Emily's hand. "We'll wait." Outside, the late morning sky was overcast, but the weight on their shoulders felt lighter, if only by a fraction. As they passed beneath the city's gray canopies, a newspaper rack caught Emily's eye. A bold headline read, "Art Predator? Scandal Rocks Gallery Scene." Liam's name was already splashed across gossip columns, but the scandal was only half told. Emily felt a surge of vindication as Michael gently tapped the DS envelope sealed in her palm. "This is the real story," he murmured, and she pressed the package to her chest. Returning home, they discovered fresh flowers on the kitchen table, lilies and daffodils, arranged in Emily's favorite vase. No note accompanied them. Michael frowned. Who could? He cut himself off as he noticed the bottom of the vase. A thin, almost imperceptible slit. He lifted it, revealing a scratched surface on the table. Nearby, scrawled in red paint on the tile, were 2 letters. His heart clenched. Liam was neither helpless nor silent behind bars. He had allies or ways to strike even through the legal system they had just engaged. That evening, they bolstered the brownstones' defenses. Michael reconfigured the security cameras to record every entrance and exit. Emily's tablet, which had once held Liam's texts, was wiped clean and set aside. They ate dinner in silence, the clink of cutlery echoing across the empty dining room. When the meal ended, Emily retreated to her studio nook, a small sunlit alcove she had claimed years ago. She stared at a blank canvas and felt the familiar swirl of dread. A memory surfaced. Liam's voice whispering that artists thrive on sacrifice. Did she, too, deserve to be sacrificed? Instead of despair, a spark of defiance ignited. Emily dipped her brush into a jar of crimson paint and made a single, decisive slash across the white expanse. She painted with quick, relentless strokes, each line an exorcism of shame and fear. As the painting took shape, a riot of vermilion and black converging into a fractured silhouette, Michael stood in the doorway, watching her reclaim the narrative brush by brush. He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and she leaned into the warmth of his resolve. Night deepened, and the city's hum lulled them into a fragile calm. Michael loaded the raw footage of Emily's impromptu creation onto a secure drive, intending to share it later as evidence of her recovery and strength. He powered down the lights and joined her at the canvas. "This is beautiful," he said softly, voice thick. Emily paused, wiping sweat and paint from her brow. "It's mine," she replied. "No one else's." Her words echoed through the loft like a vow, an affirmation that the next chapters, whatever storms they might bring, would be painted in her own hand. Outside, rain began again, tapping a steady rhythm against the window, a reminder that, though the storm had not yet cleared, they had weathered its fiercest gusts together. And as they stood united before the painting, Michael and Emily knew the path ahead would demand courage, creativity, and the unwavering belief that the truth, once revealed, could never again be hidden. Sunlight sifted through the rain-beaded windows of the brownstone, painting the foyer's marble floors in soft gold. Michael arrived early at the front door, hands full of fresh roses. White lilies, Emily's favorite, meant to brighten her mood before the day's events. Today was the opening of her first solo exhibition since the scandal broke, Shadows and Sunlight, at the restored Industrial Gallery in Dumbo. For weeks, Emily had poured every ounce of her fear and defiance into a dozen large canvases, vivid expressions of betrayal, resilience, and rebirth. She met him in the entryway, cheeks flushed with anticipation and nerves. Her black coat swung open to reveal a simple silk dress streaked faintly with dried paint flecks. Michael offered her the roses, and she pressed them to her chest, smiling through a tremor that betrayed her excitement. They drove together in silence through the awakening streets, the city's walls still dripping from dawn showers. Michael kept a steady hand on Emily's knee, a comforting anchor as they descended beneath the Manhattan Bridge into the gallery district. At the warehouse-turned-gallery, a small line of early patrons snaked around the block, collectors, critics, neighbors who had watched Emily's story unfold online. A soft hum of conversation and camera shutters floated through the gray morning air. Inside, the gallery's cavernous space exhaled a welcoming warmth. Exposed wooden beams arched overhead. Polished concrete floors reflected the track lighting that illuminated each painting. Along the far wall, Emily's newest work, Recluse, stood massive and arresting. A torn figure curled against a void of inky black, lit by a halo of molten gold. Nearby, Unbound portrayed shattered chains dissolving into birds in flight. Embers bared a heart aflame, its edges fraying into smoke. Emily's breath caught as she surveyed her creations displayed in proud sequence. No longer hidden in clandestine lofts or bathroom mirror selfies, but celebrated under a vaulted ceiling. Michael slipped an arm around her waist. "They're incredible," he whispered so only she could hear. A soft voice interrupted. "Ms. Kaplan?" A gallery assistant stepped forward, tablet in hand. "The press is here. You have several interviews lined up before the opening reception. And security has arrived. They'll discreetly monitor the event." Emily nodded, cheeks paling. Even here, amid admiration, She felt the tremor of exposure. Michael squeezed her hand. "I'll be right beside you," he said. The assistant led Emily toward a small alcove set up for interviews. Flashbulbs popped. Cameras rolled. She answered questions with a calm grace, each word carefully chosen. How her art had become a vessel for truth. How she refused to let betrayal define her. How creation had become her instrument of survival. Michael watched from just outside the frame, admiration shining in his eyes. Each genuine smile she managed felt like another chain broken. Meanwhile, patrons drifted through the galleries, pausing before Emily's pastels of crimson tears and charcoal streaks. Many wiped tears or nodded appreciatively, murmuring about the raw emotion her work captured. A hush of reverence settled over the space. Her vulnerability had become universal. As the reception hour approached, Michael noticed a figure slipping quietly through the crowd. A tall silhouette in a charcoal overcoat, gloved hands clutching a folded canvas tied with black ribbon. The stranger wove between guests, never stopping at any painting, yet always within Emily's line of sight. Concern pricked Michael's gut. He excused himself and followed at a measured distance. He watched the man pause before recluse, his gloved fingers hovering inches from the canvas. Michael stepped forward. "Can I help you?" he asked quietly. The man turned, features obscured beneath the brim of a hat. He smiled thinly and pressed the folded canvas into Michael's hand. Before Michael could react, the stranger melted back into the milling crowd. Michael unfolded the ribbon to reveal a small painting. A close-up of Emily's tear-streaked face from the loft video, rendered in blood-red oil on dark linen. In the corner, 2 letters were scrawled in black paint. Ellis. Michael's blood ran cold. He felt the gallery's warm hum fade beneath the threat that had followed them here. He clutched the painting to his chest, voice low on his device. "Security. 2 letters. Ellis. I need professional." The guard stationed discreetly by the entrance nodded and moved to intercept the attacker. But the stranger was gone. Michael returned to Emily's side, concealing the micro-threat behind a calm facade. He handed her the rogue painting, careful to keep others from seeing. Her eyes widened in horror and recognition. "He's here," she whispered. "He never stays away." He wrapped an arm around her, voice resolute. "Not for long." He directed her to the gallery's private office, where they could regroup. The gallery manager, alerted by Michael's guard, ushered Emily inside and bolted the door. Michael held the unwanted gift as evidence. Proof that Liam Scott's reach still extended beyond the bars, and that she remained prey to his obsession. Inside the office, Emily's composure cracked. She sank into a leather armchair, the rogue canvas resting on her lap. "I thought I was safe," she murmured. That closing the chapter would end him. Michael knelt before her and took the painting, setting it gently on the desk. "The chapter isn't over until we decide it is," he said. He tapped a news alert on his phone. A short article had already appeared. "Mysterious painting disrupts Kaplan exhibit, casting a shadow over her triumph. They'll frame this as drama." Emily's lips trembled. "They'll say I orchestrated it for publicity." Michael squeezed her hand. "We'll control the narrative. We'll show them proof of coercion. We'll file another statement with the DA. It'll reinforce her protection order. And we'll turn this new threat into another force for change." She met his gaze, eyes shining with tears and determination. "Yes," she whispered. "Let's do that." Outside, the crowd's applause swelled as Emily emerged for the reception. The rogue painting remained locked away, a silent reminder of the storm that still brewed. But as Emily stood tall before her supporters, her chest lifted in pride once more. Michael knew that together they would transform every threat into a testament of resilience. Tonight, the gallery shone under strings of fairy lights, laughter and clinking glasses echoing between beams. Tomorrow, they would file the evidence, rally the community, and fortify their defenses. For now, in the golden light of achievement tinged with peril, Emily Kaplan reclaimed her power. One brushstroke, one vow at a time. The gallery's lights dimmed to a warm glow, and guests drifted into clusters, drawn by Emily's triumphant presence and the comforting hum of uplifted conversation. Michael remained at her side, alert to every shadow, every uneasy glance. Yet, even as they navigated the crowd, she accepting congratulations, he fielding whispered questions about the unexpected canvas. They could feel the pulse of something greater, a community uniting around her art and her story. Later that evening, the gallery manager led Emily and Michael to a secluded upstairs loft, once storage space for crates of artwork, now repurposed for quiet reflection. They closed the door softly behind them. Michael placed the rogue painting on an easel beneath a single spotlight. In its blood-scarlet brushstrokes, Emily saw the fractured echo of her own pain magnified by Liam's cruelty. She turned to Michael, voice steady but firm. This must go public. He nodded. Let it stand as testimony. We'll release the image tomorrow with an account of what happened. It'll show his reach, but also our refusal to be silenced. Emily hesitated for a moment, gazing at the painting's violent beauty. Then she dipped a brush into silver paint and, with a decisive stroke, traced a wide diagonal slash across the portrait's face. The silver cut through blood to reveal white canvas beneath. An incision of defiance, reclaiming her likeness from his grip. Beneath it, in silver script, she painted 3 words, "No more control." Michael watched, chest tight with pride. When she finished, she stepped back, breathing in the loft's hushed air. The altered portrait stood transformed, once a threat, now a declaration of freedom. In the following days, the image of Emily's defaced portrait appeared across social media feeds and morning news sites. The headline read, "Artist Strikes Back. Kaplan defies threat with bold new work." Accompanying the article was Emily's statement, how the painting had been slipped into her exhibition by an unknown assailant, how its presence revived old fears, and how she turned it into a manifesto of autonomy. Responses poured in, supportive messages from artists, survivors of abuse, and strangers moved by her courage. Donations flowed to her newly founded mentorship collective. Interviews flooded in, not about sensational scandal, but about resilience, art as justice, and forging solidarity from trauma. Michael watched the numbers climb, but more importantly, he watched Emily's shoulders relax, her smile genuine, as she read the outpouring of empathy. Yet beneath their optimism lay a quiet urgency. Emily returned nightly to her private studio in the brownstone. No longer the grand gallery loft, but the intimate cocoon of her own making. There, she painted feverishly on a large canvas. A series of interlocking hands, some shackled, others reaching out to break chains. Each stroke was layered with silver and gold, symbolizing wounds and healing intertwined. Michael brought her tea, always mindful of the hours slipping by, and together they spoke softly about each gesture, each color choice, forging a map for others to follow. One afternoon, Michael's phone buzzed with a tip from an anonymous art critic. A small company in upstate New York had received boxes of unsigned canvases bearing Liam Scott's signature style, moody abstracts in carmine and obsidian, slated for sale at underground auctions. Someone was continuing his legacy, trading in his theft of trust and creativity. Michael's jaw clenched. He relayed the information to Emily, and they devised a plan. He would contact the state attorney general's office about counterfeit art trafficking, while Emily would address her followers with a live-streamed appeal to report any suspicious auctions or shipments. That evening, Emily sat before her camera in the brownstone's softly lit living room. Behind her, the interlocking hands painting loomed. She spoke directly to her audience in calm, persuasive tones. How the integrity of art depended on consent, transparency, and respect. How predators peddled stolen vulnerability as marketable commodities. And how each viewer could help by scrutinizing art sales and raising their voices. Through the live chat, former victims of artistic exploitation shared their stories. And by the stream's end, Emily had outlined a clear resource hub on her website, legal contacts, mental health hotlines, and a database of vetted art mentors. As the camera faded, Michael joined her with a relieved smile. "You turned another threat into hope," he said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him, exhaustion and satisfaction mingling in her expression. "Art must serve truth," she murmured, "and I will never stop painting it." A week later, under a low-rubbed ceiling in a provincial courthouse, Emily and Michael testified in a hearing on art fraud and exploitation. Their evidence, photographs of the rogue painting, the silver-slashed portrait, counterfeit canvases samples, formed a tapestry of proof that forced prosecutors to pursue charges against Liam's associates. Each witness's account, each exhibit they presented, built a solid case that threatened to dismantle the underground network he'd built. Back in the brownstone, after the hearing adjourned, Michael poured them both glasses of red wine. The rich color reminded them of Emily's fiery resilience. They clinked glasses softly, savoring a moment of calm amid the whirlwind. Outside, dusk settled as the city's heartbeat slowed. Emily gazed out the window at the distant skyline, lights blinking like watchful stars. She turned to Michael, eyes alight. "We're changing the story," she said. "Not just ours, but hundreds more who've been silenced." Michael smiled, lifting his glass in a silent toast to the future they were forging together. And in that quiet, hopeful glow, they knew the path ahead, while still fraught with challenge, would be guided by truth, art, and the unbreakable bond they had reclaimed. The winter light inched through frost-flecked windows as Michael unlocked the front door to their brownstone, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Inside, Emily sat at her easel in the converted attic studio. High ceilings, exposed beams, and the soft hum of city life far below. Her latest canvas stood half-finished, a tangle of thorny vines dissolving into vibrant blossoms, each petal a testament to growth emerging from pain. She looked up and gave him a tired smile. "Thank you," she whispered, reaching for the mug. He settled beside her, warmth radiating through the porcelain cup. The studio smelled of turpentine and drying paint, a sanctuary where Emily's creativity reclaimed what was once stolen. Outside, the world had shifted. Their gallery exhibition had become a traveling show, and Emily's mentorship collective had grown into a community of survivors and advocates. Michael tracked the collective's messages daily, artists seeking guidance, testifying to the power of shared experience. Each new sign-up felt like another victory over the shadows Liam Scott had cast. But tonight, their work took a personal turn. Emily pointed to the canvas's center. Where vines curled in murky greens, she planned to paint a lone figure, her own silhouette, cutting through the tangle with golden shears. "It's time to tell my story from the inside," she explained quietly. "Not just the aftermath, but the very moment I chose to break free." Michael nodded. He understood the weight of that decision. "Let me help," he offered. She poured a drop of gold pigment onto the palette. "Together," she said, mixing the paint. As they painted in unison, Emily guiding the composition, Michael cutting in gilded lines. The quiet intimacy of their collaboration wove new strands of trust. The studio's soft glow illuminated their synchronized strokes, a dance of reconstruction as deliberate as it was cathartic. Later, Michael collected the finished piece, a breathtaking tableau of liberation. The figure's golden shears glinted against deep emerald leaves, petals bursting where the vines once strangled. Emily traced the final petal with a fingertip. "This is my breakaway," she murmured. That night, they unveiled the new work during an intimate online gathering. Emily introduced the painting as Severance, and spoke candidly of the moment she realized her life belonged to her, no longer curated by someone else's ambition. The chat overflowed with hearts and messages. "I see myself in that figure. Thank you for your courage. My own severance happened last week." Amid the support, a private message flickered on Michael's phone. A tip from a flooring contractor at the gallery's new location. Beneath a stack of crates in the back room, he'd found a USB drive taped to the underside of a workbench. No name, just embossed letters, Ellis. Michael withheld the alarm from Emily until they could examine it together. After the webcast ended, he placed the drive on the studio's work table. Emily's breath caught as she recognized the monogram. They had thought Liam's reach neutralized. Yet here was tangible proof that someone, somewhere, sought to keep him alive in their world. They opened the drive cautiously. Inside lay more footage. Scenes of Emily painting late at night, alone, her vulnerable moments, stitched together with ominous music. One clip ended with a whispered threat. "You think you've won?" Michael paused the playback, steadying himself. Emily rose, pacing the wooden floor. "He wants this story told over and over until I'm too tired to continue." She sank into a nearby chair, shoulders slumping. "Maybe he thinks exhaustion will break me." Michael knelt beside her, lifting her chin. "He's wrong," he said gently. Every time we expose him, we grow stronger. This drive, this threat, only proves we're making a difference. We'll turn it into light again. They devised a plan. Incorporate the footage into a final workshop, facing the flashlight, teaching artists how to reclaim surveillance and use it as a shield rather than a weapon. Emily would narrate the clips live, pausing to explain the emotions each represented and guiding viewers to digital arts exercises that transformed vulnerability into empowerment. Michael would secure the drive's contents for legal archives, safeguarding a record of ongoing intimidation. That weekend, their virtual workshop filled to capacity. Participants logged in from every continent, hungry for strategies to protect art and self. Emily stood before her camera, calm and resolute, as she played the first clip. Her lone silhouette at the easel, painted in shadows. She paused the video and offered compassionate guidance. When fear creeps in, acknowledge it, but don't let it define your brushstrokes. As the session progressed, chat messages shifted from distress to action. I'll install motion detectors. I'll watermark my sketches. I'll share my break-free story. The transformation was palpable. From viewers cowering under unseen threats to a global movement wielding art as both armor and antidote. When the workshop concluded, Emily sank onto her studio stool, exhaustion tempered by triumph. Michael joined her, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. We faced the flashlight, he said, and it didn't blind us. She leaned into him, her voice soft. We turned his darkness into knowledge. Outside, the winter wind howled, but inside, the studio glowed with purpose. The vines and blossoms on Emily's canvases echoed the cycle of struggle and renewal. And in every brushstroke, she had severed another link to her past. As Michael extinguished the lamps, they stood together amid paintings that told a story no longer owned by a predator but by a survivor. And though Liam Scott's presence lingered in scattered threats, Michael and Emily had forged a community unbreakable by intimidation. One where each artist learned that true mastery comes from reclaiming the canvas of one's own life. In the stillness of morning, as New York slowly stirred awake, the attic studio transformed into a sanctuary. Shadows played across the canvases that filled the space like silent witnesses to healing. In the center stood a new piece, the one that would be the last, the one Emily had never dared to paint until now. It wasn't a beautiful painting. It wasn't comforting. On the canvas, a room where it had all begun. White walls, a cracked mirror, the gaze of a woman trapped in her own reflection. But this time her eyes were open, and she wasn't looking at the man who broke her. She was looking at herself, and seeing strength. Michael stood quietly behind her, watching as the final stroke, a thin line of silver, transformed fear into a symbol of closure. He didn't touch her, didn't speak. This was hers to finish. They both knew what came next was silence. Not because the threat was gone, but because it had lost its power. People who had once stayed silent were now sharing their stories. Through letters, through art, through videos that surfaced each day. Emily's voice had become a catalyst. Not a war cry, but a quiet revolution dismantling the silence of thousands. By the end of the week, a new installation appeared at the gallery. The End of the Lens. It was a space without paintings, just an empty frame. Visitors looked into it and saw themselves. Each person became part of the narrative. Each received a small card, printed with a line from Emily's journal. They tried to own my story, so I wrote a new ending. Back in the studio, Emily stretched a blank canvas across the easel. She no longer had anything to prove, and for the first time in a long time, her hands didn't shake. They moved with intention, without urgency. She was painting not from pain, but from wholeness. Michael stepped into the room, holding an envelope. His face was serious but calm. He handed her the letter, an official document. Liam Scott had been legally stripped of rights to his estate. His agents had lost their licenses. His work was banned from being sold commercially without a formal statement of his abusive legacy. Emily didn't smile. She simply nodded. It wasn't a victory. It was a fact. Just another footnote in a story that no longer held her captive. What now? Michael asked, sitting beside her. Now, I paint what I want, she replied. Without pain. Without the past. Just me. They sat together in silence. And for the first time, it wasn't emptiness. It was home. So Emily's story came to an end. Not with a dramatic climax, but with peace that follows the storm. Her paintings traveled the world. Her name became a symbol of depth, of pain, of rebirth. But she no longer lived inside that symbol. She lived in simple things. Morning light, a first sip of coffee, canvases waiting for her gaze. And when people asked, "Is that the same artist?" the answer was simple. No, she's a new one now.